Welcome to Side by Side with Gabi. I am Gabriela Frois, teacher and teacher trainer, and this is my opportunity to introduce you to some of the teacher educators I know and respect. Today I'm talking to Hellen, a specialist in business English. She will share her insights on how to move beyond the course book to create meaningful and effective lessons for business English students. So let's get started. Hellen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start with an introduction, maybe. Can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your journey into specializing in business English?
Absolutely. So I started teaching English in 2011, a couple of years ago. And about 3 years after I had started, I was assigned to work in company. And I had no idea what that meant. So what my boss back then did was she gave me a course book and she said, go. All right. I thought that was it. And I'm a kind of restless soul. I just good enough never suffices. It's always like I want more. How do I answer their questions better? How do I meet their needs better and more effectively? How can we deliver more? So I was always studying, and that's why I eventually took a CELTA and then Delta. So nowadays, I'm a teacher trainer and also business English mentor with my own company, Higher Up Business English. We offer both solutions in business English training for our clients and teacher training courses, consultancy, mentoring, etc. This is basically how I got there.
Yeah, I was going to mention that you are also a researcher, right? That you
Yeah.
do research and you write about
Yeah, that's
business
true.
English as lingua franca. So maybe you
Yes.
could tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, sure. In the workshop that you're going to see, I talk a little about BELF, which actually stands for English as a Business Lingua Franca. And this is interesting because originally when the ladies who coined the term BELF, they thought about ELF, business, BELF. But later on, they decided that the focus was not business English. The focus was on English being used with the purpose of doing business. Hence, English as a business lingua franca, which makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's
Perfect sense.
basically what BELF means.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is that it's not that you were motivated into starting to teach business English. You were it was a suggestion from the place you used to work for, and because you were already there, you kind of fell in love with it. Could we say you fell in love with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had the opportunity to teach several contexts. I have taught children, I have taught teens, I have taught I have taught exam preparation. I have tested the water in several ELT contexts. But the moment when my boss placed me to give classes in company, it was kind of an aha moment. And after some time, when I was already a business English teacher, but I was teaching some other stuff, and I was talking to a consultant because I felt a bit stuck in my career, and I didn't know, oh, okay, where should I go next? Yeah, everybody has heard the story. And he asked me, okay, which is your favorite niche in EOT? And I said, definitely business English. And he said, well, you should specialize. Oh, yeah, sure. And then I started researching that more and more.
Wrong words.
Yeah.
He told Hermione to specialize.
Yes, of course. And that, because to me, it's, as I said, it's never, okay, that's good. No, I am always trying to excel. So when I came across ELF, it changed my entire universe, and okay, I can talk about ELF for hours, and people know me for ELF because I have given several
I
talks
do, yeah.
on ELF, yeah. But then after some time, I came across the concept of BELF, and that's what prompted me into actually doing research. And I can say I do some action research. For instance, I have just been to a conference where I was actually presenting the results of research I was doing with teachers of English. So yeah, that's it.
Very nice. Very
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah.
And so the workshop you will be offering is named Business English Beyond the Coursebook. I found this title somewhat intriguing. So can you tell us what it means to go beyond the coursebook in this context?
Sure. As I said, the first thing I did was my boss gave me a course book and she said, go. And that's it. I had no proper training on business English. And then it took me a couple of years actually to realize the course book is not what business English means. And I mean that it's not what business English represents in its entirety. So it's a very common mistake. I see that on plenty of Facebook groups of the teachers out there saying, oh, if I want to teach business English, which course book should I pick up? And there is so much more than a course book. That's not exactly what business English, all that business English entails. I mean, and I say that in the workshop, there's nothing wrong with using a course book, but you cannot just assume that you are doing business English just because you're following a course book. And that's the message I want to show in this workshop.
Yeah, and I think this is something when we think of general English, for instance, I would say uh, it's much more expected that you can find a course book that will kind of cover the main areas that a person needs to learn in order to, I don't know, survive in the language. But you are absolutely right. In the world of business, I cannot see how a book could cover all the corners because it is a world of possibility. Each student will be a different student. Each business is a business, and then each, I don't know, the needs are completely different from one to the other. And I actually admire the person who is able to think of the topics and put it together to write a book. But even though it is maybe a good starting point, it's definitely not the end of it, right?
Precisely. And not to mention that we are very used to that in Brazil. Every school, if you enroll, they're going to give you material. And you have to buy a course book, and then you go and you follow the course book, and that's it. That's what's expected. In fact, our clients, there's a very funny thing because we say, okay, we do use part of course books, but they're not the whole story. We're going to give you more than that. So don't feel bad if we use like 30% of it. Okay. Yeah, and that's for beginners. Okay, from a certain level, we don't use them at all. Simply because a course book cannot possibly cater to all the possibilities, like you said. So you have to, if you're actually doing business English, you have to go beyond the course book. You can't just get stuck to there and think, okay, that's all I have, that's all I need. No.
Well, I'm not near being an expert in business English at all, but I can imagine that the material gets old quickly as well, right? Because the language changes very quickly, and the jargons and the way they communicate, and even the influence of lingua franca probably changes it in such a pace that it's impossible for course books to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly what you said, because if you consider that, if we consider Belf, Belf has got many characteristics. So we think about Belf as being something variable that does not follow native standards. So yeah, people are more interested in getting the job done because this is one of the goals. When we talk about Belf, we have two goals: getting the job done and building rapport. So the tools people are going to use to get the job done can vary. And they can vary not only according to the language, but also according to the culture they are they operate within. And by culture, I don't just mean the geographical culture. So we're not just talking about Brazilians. We're talking about a Brazilian operating in a Chinese company, which is in Mexico. So
And there's also the culture of the company, right?
precise, that's exactly what I mean. So we are talking about the person's own culture. We're talking about the departmental level of culture, and then the company, and then the country. So all of these interplay, and they affect the way people are going to communicate. That's why just getting a simple lesson on functions, for instance. Oh, okay, we're going to I don't know, invite people over for a dinner, which is a very common topic of business English course books. That can vary so dramatically depending on the culture.
For sure.
You know, it's not just in terms of inviting people, but understanding when they say yes and when they say no, when they're hesitating. So all of these nuances are not covered in course books, you know? So these are things we have to take into consideration.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every single class, I always think about the actors playing it, you know.
It is true. Now, if we think about teachers who work with business English and who use the course book and would like to move beyond the traditional course book based lessons, what are the main challenges they face? And what could be your piece of advice?
I think the first challenge is not knowing you don't know. Yeah, because
Good.
if you don't know you don't know, then it's kind of impossible to start
change.
to look for things. Yes, exactly. Oh, that's why. Well, I use a course book. I'm teaching business English. Full stop. Okay. So the first challenge is understanding there is more to it. The second, I would say, is that it's a challenge that I struggle with a couple of times because I have to ask my clients to bring me material. And they don't understand that. There's also confidentiality issues. So the company might not allow, for instance, I was helping a recruiter and she had to talk to her client. She was recruiting in Brazil, but her client was Irish.
Okay.
And she had to understand the client's needs in order to recruit the perfect candidate. Okay, so she had a meeting with this client and she said, every time I have a meeting with this client, I cannot understand him. Yeah. So I told her, okay, record the meeting. Oh, but I cannot. Okay, record it on your mobile. You're not going to show anybody that. Okay, this is only for you, for listening purposes, because then you can listen to it again and again. You can replay the meeting and see if you actually understood what you understood. So she showed me, she brought that to our sessions, and then I could help her with that. But there were some parts where she said, okay, here I have to skip this part because they were talking about some very sensitive topics. You know, so this does happen. So having
part of your job is helping a person communicate in, for example, a meeting you cannot know the content of.
Yeah.
It's,
You got the struggle.
seems pretty easy. Yeah.
You got the struggle. That's the problem. That's one of the challenges because you don't have access to
Mm-hmm.
the full context, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Many times you have to imagine what
Got it.
people will need in the future because they are studying business English for the future.
Got
So
it.
they don't use it now, but they will eventually. So
Mm.
how do you prepare them? With
It takes a lot of experience.
yes, exactly,
Yeah.
potential things.
Mhm.
Something else that also happens is that when you're working with authentic materials, with things that your learners bring you, you have to respond on the spot. And
Mm.
that can be quite challenging because if you don't have experience to ask them the right questions about
Mhm.
that, if you don't know how to deal with the emergent needs, then you're going to feel frustrated because
Mhm.
you feel, oh my God, I don't know anything about that. And you shouldn't actually.
Mhm.
Your job is to teach English, but knowledge of the context, the segment they operate in, is quite helpful to you because then you can speak at the same level as your client.
Sure, sure. And I think, well, and this is something I think we share in terms of belief.
Mhm.
There's a lot more to teaching than just instructing, right? We learn a lot when we are teaching, and the more we learn about the student, the more we can help them. And maybe this
Absolutely.
is why we have burnout.
Yeah,
We get
obviously.
involved so much. Yeah, but I mean,
Obviously. Yeah,
yeah,
but it's exactly what you said, you not everybody's ready to take a step backwards
yeah.
and let the student leads the way,
Hmm.
and that's quite of a
I think
challenge.
so. Yeah,
If
it
you're a
takes
novice
confidence, I think.
yeah, to deal
Yeah.
with whatever they throw at you,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I have
Definitely.
helped to once I was helping a client prepare a presentation and it was hilarious because I'm a very picky person. So
Mm.
mistakes just, jump in front of me. So I was helping her prepare the presentation and I asked her, did you notice there is the picture was portraying people talking about DNA because there were some DNA strains. And I asked her, why are there DNA strains on your business presentation? And she said, you know, like 30 different people have seen this presentation and nobody noticed that. You see. And she was really surprised. And it has nothing to do with business, but with my attention to detail. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
this person, for example, she was the director at a multinational, and she would come up with really bizarre questions that were not, they were about English, but they entailed knowledge of the business.
Bizarre in the sense of really hard for you to
Really, really
answer.
hard. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. I
Mm-hmm.
I knew these things because I read. Okay, I read the Harvard Business Review. I watch lots of videos on YouTube about leadership, about business operations, about processes, agile methodology. I am into these things, so that's how I know. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they throw things at you that are completely unexpected, and then if you keep saying I don't know, then
Of course. Mm-hmm.
what does that do to you and to your learner?
For
So these
sure.
these are some of the challenges we have to face when we go through we go beyond the course book.
Beyond the course book.
Yes.
Yes. So what can participants expect to learn in this workshop you're preparing?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the difference between general English versus business English. Some of the things I said here, but more in depth. So we're going to talk about the business English profile. We're going to work on very practical things because I'm working with
Mm-hmm.
authentic materials here. I'm bringing a prospect that was actually one of my clients, and we're going to
Oh,
analyze
nice.
his profile. We're going to come up with a needs analysis together, and we're going to look at some activities that we could do to address the needs that we have identified.
So basically, you're going to, I don't know, spark creativity by setting the example and
Yes, yes.
showing
Mhm.
uh, how well you do
Frustrating.
it, and maybe encourage other people to, I don't
Mhm.
want to say think outside the box because this is such a coach kind of sentence, but think outside the box.
Yeah, well, I when I attend a course, I want it to be practical. I wanted
Yeah.
to provide ideas that I could use myself. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually showing you how you could do it and provide you an example of that.
Mm-hmm.
My intention is to make everybody who attends this workshop to think about the process, how they would do it, and then provide possible answers, because I don't have the answers. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to tell people how I do it, and they might agree or not.
Mm-hmm.
But things that are all based on materials that either were provided by the student, and there
The
is
shoe.
one specific example there, which were print screens of my student,
Mm-hmm.
and
Nice.
I'm showing you exactly what to do with the emergency needs, what you could do with that. I'm showing you a practical example to do with listening, to deal with listening, bottom up and top down listening skills.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And something about intercultural competence. So it's as thorough as one hour workshop could be.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it seems like, yeah, you have really, really good ideas, which will be amazing to see in action.
Yeah, well, I hope people like it.
Yeah, me too. So, Helen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
And thank you for watching. I hope you found this conversation with Helen insightful and that it gave you some ideas to take into your own teaching practice. If you would like to learn more, be sure to check out her workshop on business English. It will be packed with practical tips and strategies. Don't forget to follow me here and on my platform for more conversations like this one.